Let's start the recording. Okay, so welcome everyone to the September 14th or 15th instance of the Antrea community meeting. For today, we have an agenda which probably is not going to take the full hour, but since we have to discuss a little bit of naming, yeah, it likely will. So let's see the topics that we have on the agenda today. You can find the agenda on the community Slack channel. So first we have a discussion of a solution for audit logging for Antrea network policy, and that is brought us from Chi. And I'm sorry if I killed your Chi, sorry, and I'm sorry if I killed your name. And then for today we have a discussion of a short name for Antrea network policy. This should be an easy naming task, so should not be too much, and Abhishek will lead that one. And finally, with Chan today, we are going to discuss a proposal for changing API groups. All right, so these are all the topics that I know of. If there is any other topic that you would like to bring up, we can easily discuss it after in the open discussion section of the meeting. So is there any objection to this agenda? Sounds good. So Chiyue, if you want, you can get started.
Yeah. I'll share my screen. Thanks everyone. Today I'll do a presentation of audit logging for custom network policy and a demo. It's my intern project. So the overall goal is to implement firewall logging used for auditing and analyzing traffic when it is enabled individually by each custom network policy. From the flow on the right, we could see that it goes from the YAML spec to Antrea controller, Antrea agent, OVS, and then send packaging back to agent, and then we store the log. So moving on to the details. First, we changed the CRD in spec. We added a new field, enable logging, in the ingress and egress for cluster network policy. And another notice is that we also start packaging if Antrea policy feature gate is enabled. At that time, we subscribe to the channels, which will be used later. Then moving on to Antrea controller, it converts the spec to computed rule, and which includes enable logging. So from this spec, it would be true or false for custom network policy, and it will be default to false for Kubernetes network policy because it does not support this field. Then moving on to Antrea agent, we register packaging handler with OpenFlow under reason 0 and 1. Also check rule enable logging to create different flows. We'll talk about this later. And we initialize a custom logger that will be used to log the information. Then moving on to OVS, we load this position in register 7. So this is that we created a new register to particularly load the allow or drop information to extract it later for logging. And then we send packaging to controller with a corresponding reason. So currently we use 0 for network policy, and 1 was previously used for traceable. I will also talk about that in detail later. Also in the Antrea agent, here the network policy controller, based on the received packet reason, we forward the packet to subscribed channel, which was subscribed during the start packaging. Then use the registered handlers to handle packets. These were registered in agent from here. Then finally, in Antrea agent, we handle the packets, we parse the information to of the packet to load, and also from the registers retrieve the information that we previously loaded. Then use initialize the logger to log. An example of this is like it would be date, time, file, table name, CMP name, disposition, OF priority, source IP, destination IP, and protocol. I will show this later during the demo. So the log tool used in this project is the Golang log and Lumberjack. So Lumberjack is maintained properly, and it has a recent release, version 2 in 2017. I have set the file rotation to be 500 mega size. So after that, the original file name would be renamed with the current timestamp and create a new file with the previous name to log. And there would be of maximum 3 backups, and the previous logs will be compressed, and after 28 days, they would be deleted. There are other choices like Zap, but when searching online, I found that Zap doesn't have its own rotation, so it also uses Lumberjack. Regarding this, I just choose to use the traditional log because that there's no much time difference in terms of log. Then it's the packaging reason. It's currently used to separate feature queues, which still correspond to OVS reasons. So after some testing, when we set the reason to be 0, it would correspond to the OVS reason as no match. If we set it to 1, it would correspond to the OVS reason as action. And for the other correspondence, they do not return a particular packaging packet. So a better design is to extend the user data field in packaging for separating different subscribed features or channels. This is a feature task related with OpenFlow as well. Currently, the solution is to use 0. So we register 0 for network policy logging, and 1 was previously used by TraceFlow. And finally, rate limiting. Currently, it is set on the agent side with rate limiting queue. The pro is that it does not change the OVS, but it still occupies the traffic from OVS to agent with dropped packets, because for allowed packets, a flow would be established, and there would not be continuous packaging sent back from the OVS. But if we have an attack with dropped packets, then the OVS would continuously send packets back to agent. So we want to do this rate limiting. A better design is to introduce rate limiting on OVS side to rate limit the packaging side, send to controller action for network policy specifically, and we want to prioritize TraceFlow over network policy. I was instructed with the solution to use meter, and we are investigating on this to introduce it to as a future design. Then I'll do a demo. First, I'll introduce the topologies on my there are the current pods now. We could see there's a client and server that I previously created. Later in the demo, I would log into clients and then a ping server to test. And these all run on the 23 pod. And I would dump the flows on this pod to see the changes. So at first, I'll do an allow. Sorry, my bar somehow blocked by the Zoom settings. So I need to zoom in. Now I've applied the allow custom network policy, and we can see in when we dump flow for table 89 here, instead of directly resubmitting to table 105, it sends to controller first. The reason here it says no match, but it's actually using the reason 0. Now we could see the here is a log. They originally look like this. Now I'm on the client and pinging the server. Here there is an allow logged here. We can see that here is the table name for 89, and this is the custom network policy that I previously defined. The action is allow priority. The OF priority is the same here as the flow. And source is the client, destination is server. Protocol, because I used ping, it's ICMP. And I'll set the log to false and see if there's any other log. Notice here the flow has been changed to resubmit directly after actions. Nothing is logged here, so it's correct. Next, I'll do a drop. For drop, the flow is sent to controller directly instead of a drop action. Now, if I do curl, I will not receive the content. And there are several logs drops logged, which correspond to what we previously discussed, because it tried to log several times. So for the rate limiting, we are still investigating on the OVS side, but currently the rate limiting queue is working. I used this command from the website. Basically, this file, it's after I curl this address, it will redirect to get the second address that I put in. So I'll try this one. Basically, it's sending 50 requests every second. Now it's a huge file, but I could do a grep to see the counts. Sorry, I previously tested with 101 because the default controller rate limiter that I use allows 10 requests per second and 100 bucket size. So now it should be, there should be less than expected number of requests. Basically now it's like 88 and 89, but from the command, it's sending 101 calls per second. And yeah, but for the rate limiting, of course, a better way is to implement it on the OBS side, which I will be looking at it. Yeah, I think that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really great, and I really enjoyed it, and really nice and slick. I don't have a lot of questions because it was extremely clear. In terms of functional behavior of the rate limiter, I just wondered that one is it causing the requests for logging from, the controller request from OpenVSwitch to get queued, or will it cause the request for being dropped? That's just a clarification that I wanted.
It's on the agent side, and it's for the packets received from OVS to be.
Yeah, that is right. When a packet is rate limited, sorry, the behavior is like an HTTP rate limiter, where it will drop the request from OVS, the controller request from OVS, or will the request be queued and just be put in a queue?
From what I read, it will be dropped.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I had a question from a user perspective. So first off, this was fantastic. Again, I agree with Salvatore. The logs were really clear. I think from a user perspective, two things that I think would help users. Is it possible to convert known IP addresses within the cluster to pod names or some type of a qualified pod name in the logs? Because at the time the logs were taken, if there's not a record of inventory of the pod at that time, then it would be really hard to correlate those logs. And number two, once we have tiering, fully enabled, also recording the tier name might be useful for downstream filtering for parties that are only interested in looking at logs from a particular tier.
Currently, I haven't thought about the tiering side of this, but I could look into it later.
Sure, and that's very alpha. Yeah, that's a very alpha feature right now, but just keep that in mind as you're going forward.
Yeah.
What about the IP addresses? How feasible is that?
I'm not sure if there's a place for extracting that. I probably need to look into that. But from currently what I have seen, I'm not sure there's a place to extract that information.
I think on the
But I'll
agent, it's
keep
possible to convert at least one IP to the port name. But I'm not sure what's the cost of doing that. If the overhead is high, then maybe it's not worthwhile.
Sure. I expected there may be some overhead. Yeah, if y'all could just as you're developing this feature out, spend some time looking into that. I think that would be a great usability enhancement for users to have both IP address and a pod name. And if that's not feasible, then let's look and see what that impact is.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the suggestion.
I also have two questions. So first, I'm thinking, does it make sense to keep the packet header? The log message header like a packet in .go there. I think probably it's not very interesting to the consumer of the logs.
Agree.
If we remove that, maybe we can at least save some bytes.
Sure. Yeah.
Another one, I'm not clear about that. So that does typically we include some packet attributes like the size of the packet into logs. I think that information is very easy to get, right?
Yeah, that is. If that is useful,
of course,
I put that in the log.
Yeah, but I'm not really sure it's really makes sense or not. But I'm just thinking at least if that helps, then it seems very easy to also add that information.
Yeah, perhaps more useful than packing.go.
Yeah, that is.
Is it also possible to capture the port information? I didn't see that.
Port information. I looked into that, but it's not directly in from the packet. There is IPv4, but the structure for IPv4 does not have port in there. So the IPv4 structure that we currently use.
It's possible that you have to do some additional parsing compared to what we do for traceflow today to get that information.
Yeah, it might be useful for attack analysis to have that information as well.
And a minor point, but I guess related to what Janjun said earlier, maybe the timestamp should be changed and put in a different format with milliseconds, especially when you have a lot of packets like this.
Milliseconds, sure, yeah.
Do we also indicate on the timestamp? Is it GMT or UTC or something like that? Do we make that apparent?
Yeah, it's probably
That
easy to
one.
customize the log header. So yeah.
Okay.
That is correct. These are probably little user experience changes that can be done over time, but they don't affect the validity of this demo, which is a really nice addition to the platform.
Absolutely.
I agree.
And the final question that I had is, if we wanted to measure the logging overhead on, let's say, while testing at scale, in your opinion, how we should proceed to measure what is the overhead of logging, or by any chance, did you already make some measurements of that?
Sorry, I was not familiar with the metrics. What kind of metrics?
No, I'm just thinking in terms of let's say packet processing overhead, which can be measured, let's say, in terms of throughput. Let's say, is this logging affecting throughput in any way, or is it pretty much transparent? To me, it seems that at least from the OVS data path perspective, the impact on throughput should really be negligible, but I don't know if you already had, if you actually measured it already.
Oh yeah, there's a resource measuring the CPU and memory cost of this that I'm looking into. I will include that report in the PR for this.
Okay. All right. And since I'm a very pedant person, sorry, from a reliability perspective, clearly, if the agent is down, nothing will happen, right? I mean, looking at the flows that you have installed, if the agent is down, the packet processing will proceed as normal. Is that correct?
I'm not that familiar with this.
The flows will be installed, so the packet processing should probably continue. It should be similar. There should be one.
Okay, thanks, Abhishek.
One question I have for folks was when you look at the log and the table name, was it intuitive enough that this was like a OVS table name, or should we do a key value for the table name again? For example, in this case, the CNP application university is a table name. Do we need a key for that?
Right. Actually, I was thinking in another way. I know people are talking about add more context into logs and some more user-friendly format. But actually, I was thinking if we believe performance is more important, should we use some way to compress the data a little? For example, we just use fixed format, and we don't use this keyword like protocol or test source priority, and then even for table, we can use a short name or just integer. Then we can probably reduce the size or not.
Got it. So maybe have something like a well-documented format, and then people can refer to. Okay.
Right. Of course, I don't know how people typically do this traffic logs. So I'm just
yeah, especially if you're shipping them. Yeah, if you're shipping them across the network. And this is a compressible, but and easy to read, but we could probably compress it a little bit in terms of the format.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I think another question that had come up in the past was whether we should include these logs into the support bundle by default, or it should be like a explicit ask for it. Because I think at the moment we are planning not to include this in the support bundle. Is that a fair thing to do? Anyone?
Are they needed to diagnose anything in the support bundle? Is the primary goal of the bundle is for support?
For different purpose from support bundle in my understanding. So.
I think this is more like, so feed this to analyzer and visualizer and things like that, and support bundle
More
is
for auditing, yeah.
Yeah, for auditing.
Monitoring stuff.
Correct. For support request, I may be something which is not that necessary.
Is there any plan for this, logging to syslog server?
I don't know that needs to be a concern of Antrea, right? On how the logs are collected and shipped. What do we think? Should it be a platform concern?
But if you want to support syslog, you at least need to propose some solution for that, right? If we just log to the file, then go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why, do you plan to having like a function to forward inside Antrea to forward the logging to the syslog server, or this is my ask,
I think this is something that we can maybe add into our items to work on, or like the future item slide, so that we can get back to this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be lower priority. I mean, I think if we log the file, we can leave that as a user concern right now for where they want to ship that. Because Antrea could ship it. We could inbuild a lot of different options there, but I don't think that's the primary thing we should be focusing on.
Okay.
Unless somebody has a different opinion. I mean, it should be a fairly straightforward task for a platform administrator to pull off, I would think.
This is like from networking operator perspective, using like NSX. Yeah, most of customers forward packets to syslog and to look at what connections are flowing in the environment and what connections are dropped. So that's why I wonder if we can get this function or not.
Got it.
Yep. Thanks.
We'll definitely note that. Thank you, Yuki.
Any more question on this topic? Are we good to move to the next one? I guess so. So thanks again, Chiyo, for your nice presentation here. And Abhishek, so what is this story about the short name for network policies?
Maybe we can go to Chan and have.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So, Chuan, would you like to discuss renaming for API groups, changes to API groups?
Sure. Okay, sure. Let me share my screen. So let me introduce the background first. So can you see my screen?
Yes, I see it.
Thank you. So if you remember in previous community meetings, we discussed the internal API name, and finally we choose control plane as the API group name. So in entry 0.9.3, we made the change to rename the networking to control plane. And as a result, the net policy enforcement will be disrupted until the upgrade is done. And recently, Zhengsheng raised the issue that it may be serious, because if the cluster is very large and the agents are upgraded in a loading update fashion, which could take many minutes to upgrade the whole cluster. So on some nodes, the ports will not be enforced. The policy, network policy of some ports will not be enforced correctly. So we came up with a proposal that adds the deleted networking API group back and serve both old and new API at the same time. And in implementation, we will not add all the deleted code back, and we'll only add the API group back, but we will serve the request with the same storage as the control plane storage, as the control plane API. So it will not cause much code redundancy. With this code, I have verified that we can. I also added an end-to-end test for upgrade, so that the newer entry controller can work with older entry agents and pass the conformance and network policy test. The conformance and the network policy test is verified manually, because we don't have a good mechanism for that. But I added a simple upgrade test that only upgrade entry controller only, and the basic function still works. And so this is the proposed change. And if you have objection or any better idea, you could share your ideas. And if we agree with it, by the way, we currently I'm thinking we keep two older minor release for compatibility, because we already have the upgrade test from two older minor release, and it is also consistent with Kubernetes compatibility. And if we agree with this, we could you could review this PR, and we could document the API compatibility and deprecation policy in the docs of the repo. So that's it.
Chair, question here.
Yeah.
So you are saying for large cluster loading upgrade can take like several minutes. That is just for update all the image and restart, or you're talking about the case like in some distro they need to recreate the VMs?
Even it's just a normal cluster that you update an image. Is because we set the update strategy as loading update, so it will execute in the loading update fashion. So it will first update one and then wait for it is finished, then update another one.
And then in that case, do we have a way to guarantee controller is upgraded first?
Because we if user is using the YAM to upgrade, so the controller template and the agent template the update at the same time, and the controller has only one instance, so it must be upgraded before other agents. It might be the same time as the first agent.
Okay, this is faster. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, and then for the upgrade test, do you think we are able to easily enable tests for older version of the Antrea? Because I'm saying that because we see requirements for upgrade from 0.7.2 to 0.9. Maybe it doesn't have any issue, but we never tested that. So I'm just wondering, could we just reuse your test to support that?
Sorry, could you repeat which version you want to test?
From 0.7.2 to 0.9.
Oh, okay. So in this test, this is the upgrade from -2, so it should be upgraded.
Should cover 0.7. Okay.
But we only tested the first patch release of each minor release.
No, the latest one. Yeah, the latest one. The last one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it should be 0.7.2. Yeah.
Got it. Sounds great.
But this test is very simple. It's very basic. It just checks some networking connectivity and one network policy scenario. If we want to test the whole conformance and network policy, we should have Jenkins jobs for this.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, agree. So if we, so this code is under GitHub workflow. I got it. So we can discuss how we can create a Jenkins job for this before we release a new Antrea release. Sorry, I have another question. So for example, if we deprecate, for example, deprecate some resources or API group, and then in some new release, we finally remove those resources, but during the upgrade, there must be someone to delete the old resources for us, right? So if there are some leftover API service resources, it should not interfere with those, unless because there is actually no agencies using that API, old API group.
Yes. For who deleted the resource, it is actually the Antrea controller itself. That if we decide to remove it, we could add the service API service here, so that you mean the API service or other things?
I mean the API service custom resource. So and the config, the API service custom resource.
Yeah, if it's just the API service, it will be removed by Antrea controller in future. And we will
so Antrea controller can issue a delete request to Kubernetes API to remove the old ones.
Yes, we will guarantee the delete permission of these API services.
Understood. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. Any other questions?
And I think that's all for this topic. And thanks for sharing this. And I guess that if you have any other question, comment, or if you just want to look more in detail at what Sean is doing, just go to GitHub PR and we can continue the discussion there. Say that, so our last topic for today's agenda is the renaming of the short name, for network policies. Abhishek, do you already have an idea in mind?
Yeah, so I think this came up because someone on the Slack channel kind of was trying out the network policies and used the short name for Antrea network policies, which is the namespace network policies, and he ended up using kubectl get netpol, and by default it returns the upstream Kubernetes network policies. So we kind of let him know that we both both share the same short name, you need to append the group name after the short name so that you get the correct set of network policies. But after talking to Anton offline, and I think kind of feel like if it's a short name, then it should be like short, and I don't want to append any more details behind that. So that was one of the reasons why maybe we thought that maybe we reconsider the name there. And the other thing was that it's kind of like the cluster network policies have a short name of CNP. Perhaps to be a little more, on the uniform side, maybe we name the namespace network policies as either an ANP or I think Antonin suggested an NNP. So, those were the two options. And I know the folks on the call had some opinions prior to this, so it's something that I thought maybe we can talk about.
So do I understand correctly that one of the proposal was AMP?
Yes.
I mean, at least from my perspective, that would be perfect. I don't know if there is any other idea.
I remember the problem not just for Antrea live policy, if just Antrea policy, we can use ANP. Okay, for class live policy using CNP, okay.
So yeah, I just like ran all the commands on my setup, and so this is if you do kubectl will get netpol, you will do the upstream ones, and if you want to use the ones, then you need to append the short name with the group name. Similarly, the full name done in this format for cluster network policies use this. So, this is something that we can also take offline on an issue, but I thought this was a light agenda on the meeting, so maybe we can kill some time.
Okay. I personally feel CNP, ANP sound good. Because I don't know how other people think.
I think we were originally going with CNP and AMP. And then, when I opened up the PR, people started to see that the AMP is not sort of like correspond to the Antrea namespace network policy full name, which is still named network policy. So people feel like there's a discrepancy between the short name and the long name. And there was a discussion to, rename it to netpool rather than ANP. But, as you can see here, if we do netpool.security, it is, too much a redundant short name. It probably it's even, better to just type Antrea network policy instead, which does not make a lot of sense. So.
Okay, well, I think it was me who raised the question. So,
I think Chan had talked about the Antcuttle also has the same netpol short.
Right. Yes.
So are we going to change the Antcuttle, the short name of Antcuttle that we get the internal network policy? I think it is Antcuttle get netpol right now.
Yeah, I don't think we need to change that. I mean, that's my opinion. Maybe keep the Antcuttle same.
Perhaps it's different because it is for all network policies, including Kubernetes and cluster and entry network policies. So, and I don't have any better idea than AMP, so it sounds good to me too.
Yeah, I think ANP is fine too. I don't know, maybe people want to support ACNP as a new short name as well. I think you can have more than one for cluster network policies. So it's symmetric.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think you can have multiple short name. I believe it's a list that it takes. So
By the way, when supporting the name policy metrics, I have to define metrics name for cluster name policy and entry name policy too. And because they are in the same group, the same metrics group, and including Kubernetes name policy metrics. So currently I name them network policy metrics for Kubernetes network policy, and cluster network policy metrics for cluster network policy, and entry network policy metrics for entry namespace network policies.
One thing we should keep in mind is as we develop cluster network policy in upstream V2 API, we may have some name clashes, so we may want to, specifically call out Antrea in some of these names at some point.
Yeah, I mean, Antrea cluster network policy starts to be a bit long, but yeah, that does address that concern, I guess. And it is symmetric with A and P.
The other way we could also look at this is maybe we only need the Antrea portion on the short names, because the longer names they're already fully qualified, right, by the API group.
Yeah, I mean, as long as if there is no clash, then you don't need the fully qualified name. But if there is a clash, then you can use the full
right
name.
I mean, yeah, like if there is ever like an upstream cluster network policies, the problem is if we do kubectl get cluster network policies, then it's going to be returning like the Kubernetes ones, unless we rename it to Antrea cluster network policies. And I mean, and then there is no ambiguity.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's a ways off, but that's something that we should probably be, thinking of a possible transition.
Makes sense.
I don't mind having a long name like Antrea cluster policies if we have a short name that makes sense, like ACNP.
Yeah, I think as long as the kind remains the same, I think these are just short names. So
I think either way is fine. In my mind, both ANP, ACNP are easy to remember. So probably no real difference to users.
Okay,
Do you think you can summarize a proposal on GitHub, maybe, Abhishek?
Yeah, I'll open up an issue and then I have these different proposals from today.
Thanks.
All right. So I think this also summarized the conversation on short names for Antrea network policies. Is there any other topic that you would like to bring up for today? Anything else that you would like to discuss? Any announcement? And this is the sound of silence, which means that perhaps we don't have any other topics for today, so we can close our meeting here. I would like to thank everyone for attending this call and wish you a good morning, afternoon, a good evening, or especially for the folks in the West Coast, a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.